Hey everyone, Aaron Stewart from the Little Black Couch coming to you on a Labor Day weekend, which is awesome. I treat holidays like Saturdays, so I like to come in and get some things done. A little more relaxed atmosphere. I slept in an hour and then come in and kind of hang out and get some things done here at the office. So I've been doing a lot of cleaning. It was starting to feel a little claustrophobic in here, right? So you got to keep the space open so the ideas can flow, right? So a lot of my friends are up at OfferMind up in Boise with Steve Larson. So to all of you up there, hope you're enjoying it very much. On a holiday weekend, those things are tough, I think. But anyway, I wanted to jump in today, being it's a holiday and things. I've been thinking about some other stuff. It's obviously a gorgeous day outside, so you want to get outside as quick as possible. Looks a little warm, but a nice day. So I wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about the art of reading and how it can help us in our business. So let's fire up the intro and we'll get. Welcome back. So now the sun isn't setting here, but I guess we could just go back to the old, keep it consistent. We'll go back to the old desert. How's that work? Oh, that's not going to do it either. So fun. Here he goes. There it is. That's good. Keep it consistent. Don't want to confuse anybody. So yeah, lovely day outside, obviously. And so hopefully you are enjoying your holiday weekend. We are definitely going to enjoy it here as the Stewarts. I've got my son is actually messaging me on Facebook. So he's a missionary right now. He gets home the 17th, so it's coming up really quickly, and it's going to be super fun to see him again after 2 years. But yeah, just messaging him, seeing how his week went. It's been they've changed the rules a little bit, so we can talk to them a little bit more than we used to be able to. When I was a missionary, I actually served in Japan. Konnichiwa. And it was awesome. I love Japan. I love the culture. I love everything about the country, the people, the whole thing. It was a great time. I loved serving there, but I never spoke to my family one time in 2 years. And my parents are going through a divorce, and so I'm the oldest of seven, so it was kind of an ugly time in our family history, but just that's the way we did it back then. So it's definitely evolved and changed. I guess it would have been just too expensive, frankly. So I'd send a letter and then, hear back from family like a month later and have no idea what I wrote in my letter and what the answers to my questions were. It was just completely discombobulated, and I really had no idea what was going on, but that's the way we did it. So it's kind of interesting to see how things have kind of have worked out. So he just hit me up with another message. I'm going to keep going, right? So we're going to keep talking and going with it. It looks like we've got some folks that are trying to say hello. So let me see if I can bring those up really quickly. Yeah. Let me see. That's image overlay. Apologize for this. I really should do this before we go, but I can't really see anything. So anybody watching? Hey, I can't tell. So it looks like, yeah. All right. So what I want to talk about today is reading in the art of entrepreneurship is an important one because, wow, the focus went out on the webcam. Is really important because that is how we generate new ideas and kind of keep things going. Many of you who have listened to me in the past know that I am a big proponent of education. A lot of my doctorate research was on education. And I just believe that if you don't get anything out of education, then it's your own fault, right? I don't believe that that going to college is necessarily the only way you can learn, but I don't think it's a bad way. Do I think education, and especially at a university level, has gotten far too expensive? Absolutely. Do I think you have to go to an Ivy League school? No. Some of the dumbest people I know are graduates from Ivy League schools. So that doesn't mean anything. Actually it's up to the individual, and I always believe that you can get out of whatever school you put into it. So, and it's not necessarily the professors you have. I do think professors do make a difference. But even from the very worst professors, if you're not getting tons out of that class from a textbook or looking around and doing study on that topic or talking to your fellow students or having study groups or all that, that's just on you, okay? And as an entrepreneur, that is a great opportunity to figure out how you learn, right? The best way to learn. And the more you learn and the more I learn, the better the chances are that I'm going to come up and you're going to come up with really creative solutions to very perplex and difficult problems. And that's why I say it's not even up for discussion. The more topics and areas that you focus and you learn in and you go through, the better the opportunity for you to come up with unique solutions, right? There's just more hooks for ideas and thoughts to hang on to, and that will give you a huge advantage in the entrepreneurial world, because you'll be able to see things and see unique solutions to very unique and complex problems that weren't possible because you hadn't learned certain areas, right? So, and as far as reading and how I learn and how I think a lot of humans learn, it comes up to this idea that when you get into reading, there's different ways that you can read, and it really depends on what you're trying to get out of what you were reading. And a story I have with that is I went to UNLV for my undergrad work, and yeah, it's a crazy party school. I was there when UNLV won the national championship in basketball, which was completely fun. I have a lot of really funny stories with some of the players on that team that are outrageous, and I'll save for another day. But one class that I had was sociology. It was Sociology 101, and the professor was pretty well renowned. He'd been on campus for like 20 years, so he knew what he was doing. His ratings were pretty high, and everybody that I talked to about taking this professor said, yeah, he's tough, but you're going to learn a lot. And for me, that's like, okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't care if he's tough. And so I went into his class and kind of sat there, and it was a huge auditorium type class, and it was really steep, one of those where you're almost looking straight down on the professor, and he's down there pontificating, telling us, how hard his class is. It was actually quite brilliant. He's down there talking about, this is sociology, this is what we're going to do, this is how hard it is, and if you think it's going to be an easy C, you're wrong. You might want to, get out of Dodge, because that's not going to work for you. And you could see the students in the class that really didn't know much about him start leaving, right? Just start hitting the exit. I mean, they were just boom, 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 leaving. And I was laughing inside, because you could totally see what he was doing is he was thinning the herd, right? I mean, he knew he'd been doing this so long that he knew that the students that were looking for an easy C, he needed to scare away, because the ones that show up at your office when the semester's about over begging for a grade higher or extra credit or whatever are the ones that are about to fail. And so he knew if he could scare them away right now, it was going to save him a great deal of time. And he was scaring them away like something fierce. But he also said that he graded on a curve. And there's nothing I like to hear better as a student than a professor who's grading on a curve, because that just means that you have to be slightly better than average and you're guaranteed a B, right? I mean, that's an easy B if you're grading on the curve. And obviously the students that hit the road were either not aware of that, or B work just seemed too difficult for them, right? Slightly above average, it was too difficult for them. Anyway, so he continued to talk, and I'm listening, and again, it's funny, right? I mean, he was a bit proud of himself. He was a bit pompous that he'd been teaching this for such a long time, and towards the end of his introduction into the difficulty that is his course, he said something that caught my attention. He said that nobody in his 20 years had ever obtained 100% on one of his exams. And I'm like, oh, buddy, this just got real, right? This just got exciting, because that was a throwdown. I mean, I love that kind of competition. So, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is where your 20-year reign stops, buddy, and we're going to go to work. And so I did. I mean, I was so excited about taking this on. And fortunately, sociology is pretty interesting. especially for, it was Sociology 101. I had had really no experience in sociology, so it was all brand new information and totally, that's fun, right? When you're diving into brand new information. And so I dove in, and this sent me on a journey of trying to figure out how best for me to read this textbook and take notes, because his tests were based on not his in-class notes, all his in-class lectures, so you never wanted to miss a lecture, and also the textbook and every little part of the textbook. And so I'm studying like crazy, right? I'm flashcard. I've got flashcards going on. This is before smartphones, right? So I've got flashcards with me in the car. I'm just like, this guy is going down, and the sooner he goes down, the better it is for me, as far as I'm concerned. The better it is. So I start working on things. Like crazy, trying to get this up and going, and I'm way excited about it. It's it becomes a little game. So the first little test we have, I get in there and I'm feeling super confident, and so I go to work, and we take the tests in class, which was rare. Most of the courses had a testing center, but he liked to do it in class and kind of keep an eye on everybody, which fine by me. That was more work for him, but he wanted to keep his record clean. So we all went to work, and then the next day we have class. We come in, he gets in the front, and he's like, "Hey, really good job on the test. Somebody came really close, but sorry, the highest score was 98%." And I'm like, "Oh, freak," and it turned out to be my test. But then he also kind of shows them how the grading happens on the curve, and I totally busted this curve. So he was nice enough not to say who it was, but he shot me a look. So right now I know I've got the attention of the professor, and he knows that I'm on to him, and I'm coming, right? I'm coming full board. So it continues on throughout the entire semester, and I never do get 100% as we're going along, right? I'm like 98%, 99%. I'm just missing one or two every single test, and it is absolutely driving me crazy. But the cool thing about the process was I was starting to understand how I learn and how I read, and this was end of my freshman year at UNLV, so this was huge for me. To figure out how to learn early on in my college career was important. And so I just kept going. I kept learning and changing and evolving and figuring things out. And I will share those with you soon enough. But we had 12 tests. We get down to the last test. I have not scored 100%. And it's now become kind of a game, where he sort of builds up, the announcing, and then, sorry, nobody came close, and it was like, oh, whatever. But he has kind of shared with people by coming and handing my test that I'm the one that keeps killing the curve. So I've got people that want to kill me in class. I've got, including some of the UNLV basketball players. And I've got him who has started to make the tests harder and harder each week, because, right, he's hearing footsteps. Somebody's taking this challenge on and is doing the best they can, but he's got me every single test. So the 11th test he hands back, it's 98%. I'm like, brutal. But the cool thing for me is I'd figured out within that last week how I need to study in order to retain it, in order to really learn it and retain it. And he's kind of a whack job, because he even asks questions from like the illustrations in the book, like from the text underneath the illustrations. Like, you even have to know those, because he'll throw those in there. And he has no test bank, so he changes his tests every single unit, and no test has ever been the same for the 20 years, which is brilliant. But now he's been in it 20 years, he has 20 test banks that he can pull from, so I'm sure it's not very hard for him to create new difficult tests, but he is asking tougher and tougher questions, right? So it's off his lectures and it's off the textbook, and you've got to know both, right? So I'm taking feverish notes and reviewing them, and I'm reading the textbook like crazy. Now, the huge advantage at the end of the semester is, because most of my classes were in the testing center, I just went and took my finals and all those other classes early. But his final exam is always in class. And so I knew that I was going to have 4 solid days with no other classes, so I could go down and just focus on studying this ridiculous sociology textbook and his ridiculous notes. So I went to work. I spent 4 nights from about 5 p.m. after work till like midnight, 1 a.m., and then I'd get up the next morning and I'd keep studying until I'd go to work, and then I'd come back and do it again. And I did this for 4 solid days on just this unit, and I had been reading every night before. And long story longer, I went into class, I took the test, I was super confident. When I walked out of there, I was 99.9% sure that I had gotten 100%. And if I didn't get 100%, there was just no way, right? I had to have gotten 100%. The problem was that was our last class period. I wasn't going to hear from him again. I wasn't going to see him again unless I bumped into him at class. So I took the test and got all done. I went to work actually, and then came back that night. And I had a message on my answer machine. We didn't have voicemail or anything back then. I had an answer machine, and it was a voice, not a voicemail, but it was a message from this professor telling me that I needed to come see him the next day in his office. And he told me his office hours, and I'm like, oh crap, I don't know what it's about. I'm thinking that he thinks I cheated. I'm pretty sure I got 100%, and I'm pretty sure he thinks I cheated, and I did not cheat. So I went into his office, and it was kind of a small little office, and there was really nobody there. I mean, school's essentially done. And I go into his office, and he points to a chair and has me sit down. And he shakes his head, and he's looking at my test, and he hands it to me, and he's like, congratulations. You were the first one to ever get 100% on one of my tests, and I didn't make it easy for you. And I'm just, I'm like, oh, thank you and stuff. And he's like, I want to know how you did it. And I'm like, you think I cheated? And he's like, no, I don't think you cheated. I've got a history of all your tests, and you've been studying really hard. I just want to know how you got so much information that I threw at you and were able to absorb it and then regurgitate it out on this test. I want to know how you did it. So I basically sat down and explained to him how I had taught myself how to learn from his class. And he was fascinated just from a sociological standpoint, how I learned to learn. And so we had a really cool discussion. At one point, he opened up his little fridge and handed me a Budweiser. I don't drink, so I told him I don't drink. And he said quite hysterically, well, maybe that's why. You don't get drunk, so you have more time to study. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that is a part of it. So yeah, I've never had a drink of alcohol in my life. I handed him back the beer, and he had water, so I had water. And we sat there and talked. It was really nice. Spent about an hour with him talking. He said congratulations, and he told me that from now on he would say that he had there's only been one student that's gotten 100% on one of his tests in his 20 years. And I thought, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool legacy to walk out of there and know that, hey, at least for this, there was a degree of excellence that was accomplished here. And I absolutely loved the process of figuring out how I learn. So let me sort of share that with you now. I see reading happens in 3 different ways for me, okay? When there's just normal reading, and that's usually what I do for a novel or something that I'm just looking to get some enjoyment out of. And that's just exactly how everybody reads. I'll just sit down and open it up and just start reading. Okay, I've gotten into audiobooks a little bit, and I'll explain why later. But this is just really for me to sit back and enjoy and let my imagination go wild, right? So I get to picture everything that's going on. What the author explains, I get to create in my own head, and that's why I love to read novels, and especially like spy novels and action and stuff, because I've got a wild imagination. And usually I'll have these really cool, wonderful experiences reading a book, and then when I go to sleep, I'll dream, and it's like even more spectacular. And so I love reading that way. That's just total fun, enjoyment, take my mind off what's going on, and just totally just be engaged in something that's cool and fun. And really, it's cool to see how somebody else shares what they're trying to get across. That's super fun too. So I love that kind of reading, and that is just general enjoyment reading. I think, unfortunately, there is a time and a season for that type of reading, and a lot of us as entrepreneurs think that that's the only way to process books. And that is the least effective way to process a book as an entrepreneur. Okay, that's not going to get the job done. Okay, so the second way to read, which I think is really helpful and really good, is to, as you read the book, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself time to stop, and you want to make sure that you have a pad or something to write on. So I like to use my phone. there's a lot of people that like to read in books. I know that Myron Golden shared with us that he likes to read through a book, and then he puts Post-it notes down when he's reading of comments that he has, and that's how he generates his content for his courses and his next books and all of that. I think that that's fantastic. My way is very similar. You just kind of go through and you are pulling out concepts and ideas that you like, that mean something to you, and you're marking those up and you're leaving notes. In the app that I use, I can mark with highlights, and then you can click and add a note. And so then I'll add a note of what I was thinking. And that keeps it really, really clear for me. What I like about that is I can export it when I'm done, and then I have all my notes with me about the book that I read. And that is a situation where if you are looking to expand your mind, to be more creative, to understand what's interesting to you and what isn't interesting to you, then that is a great way to read. You can also buy audiobooks, and I love to buy audiobooks and let them go ahead and read as I'm following along, right? And then I can pause and read it again myself, and you can and I just do that in my mind. I'll back them up and have them read again, and I'll just think about it. If a passage catches my attention, I'll wrote it down. A lot of you that follow me will see that there's I put out a lot of quote graphics. And a lot of that comes from that type of reading, where I'm going through, I'm trying to pull out concepts and ideas and things that are interesting and intriguing and caused me to think about something else that could be useful as an entrepreneur. Okay, so that's the second type of reading. So reading with a pad or something to take notes with, take your ideas and concepts that this reading generates in your mind and write them down. And then when you get done with reading that book, you go back through your notes. I like to go actually through them after each chapter just to kind of keep them fresh. And that builds so you can prepare yourself for the next chapter of what the author is going to attempt to teach you or share with you. And these types of books are literally like, the self-help books, or when you're getting into any of the sciences, any STEM topics, things like that, where you're just trying to expand your understanding of certain aspects of truth, to build your own expertise on top of those. So that's the kind of learning or reading that I use for that type of learning. Okay, and then the final type of learning, this is something that I used to score that 100%. I will literally, I'm gonna take a drink. So for all of you students out there, or for anybody who wants to become an expert, so this type of reading is how you become an expert in a topic. How you become authoritative in a topic. Okay, this is how it's done. If you will take whatever it is you're reading, and again, if I go through something in reading tactic or strategy number 2, and I love it, I mean, I think that the neurosciences right now have got my mind just going, right? So if I read something and I find it to be completely fascinating, and I know that I can completely geek out on that, well, if I'm going to geek out on something, I might as well become an expert in it. So the next step is to either take that book or take a book similar to that book that's on the same topic, maybe a little different, in, say, the neurosciences in this case, and then I'm going to apply this strategy of reading this strategy number 3 of reading, to make sure that when I finish this book, I will be an expert on this topic. Okay, so this is how I do it. When I start reading a book in this regard, I will stand up. So you've got to have a standing desk or something that's comfortable for you, and you lay the book out in front of you standing, and then you read the book out loud, slowly and out loud. You are engaging so many more of your senses this way. You are listening to yourself speak, which we all love to hear ourselves speak. Okay, we are staying so focused on the topic as we are reading out loud and going very slowly out loud, and if you can, loud. Read loudly, right? With emphasis. You will not believe how your mind can retain what you are reading to yourself out loudly. Take notes. Again, I think that that's great. Highlight. But if you find something that you love, that you think super important, you go back and you read it again loudly, but this time you read it as fast as you possibly can. Read it loud and read it fast, and watch how that sticks in your head. Okay, if you get done with something and your mind has just wandered off and it's just like thinking tons of stuff, awesome. Don't get frustrated. You are geeking out and you are learning. You are building. It's what they call it's what we call darn it, practice. It's called deliberate practice. Woo! It's what's called deliberate practice. When your mind goes off and starts really turning over a subject in your mind, it's deliberate practice. Your mind is so excited. It's trying to make sure that when you want that piece of information, it's available to you. Let it happen. Okay? And if you want to go back and read it out loud again, then do it. And then read it again fast and loud. And you will be amazed at how awesome and how quickly your brain could start putting these things together, chunking these bits of information together. If you will do this through a whole book while you're taking notes, when you get done, you will understand that book like you never have before. It will stick with you. You will be building blocks, a foundation for the next chapters as you go through your notes and read your notes out loud to yourself. And make sure you're standing up. There's something about sitting down and relaxing in a comfortable chair that just makes retention of what you're reading just not very good. So that's great if you're party reading for fun, knock yourselves out. I love that kind of reading. But if you want to be an expert in whatever topic you're geeking out about, stand up, read it to yourself, read it out loud. The louder the better. So you don't want to bother the family. I tend to do that here in the office when I'm alone. And then if it's something really, really cool, read it again to yourself, but read it as fast as you possibly can. And if your mind starts wandering and geeking out on a topic, let it go. It's deliberate practice. You're essentially building neural pathways to make that information available to you down the road. And you're going to need those pathways when you continue this book and you're building upon that knowledge. So let it run. Let your mind run. It's being super efficient. It's just making sure that you're getting things done. Now, if you're wandering off into what you're going to eat next and whatever, start reading again and bring yourself back. But if it's on the topic and your mind is running, just let it run. Just let that baby, open it up and let it go, right? Anyway, so those are the 3 hacks. Those are the three reading styles that I use in my life to get the most out of reading. Enjoyment, party, just relaxing and having fun, going through and trying to create, put creativity and ideas in your head to expand and let them go. That's another way of reading. And to really become an expert in a topic, it's out loud reading to yourself and staying really on point and reading it loud and hard at the end of it and fast. And that will keep it in your mind. And you will be an expert on that topic when you get done with that book, as much as you possibly can be. You will be able to talk about that topic from a very authoritative and knowledgeable place. And then everything else that you learn will start building on top of that and will create some wonderful, potentially wonderful solutions to complex problems. You will be able to learn and grow in a variety of different topics as you build on that one. And where the next solution comes for a really cool business, it's hard to say. But as long as we're learning like that, the opportunity is there. So that is it for today. Boy, that went a lot longer than I thought it would. But those are 3 strategies in reading that I think will be helpful to really anybody, especially us entrepreneurs who are trying to process as much information as possible so that we can change the world and make it a better place for all those around us, including ourselves. I can promise you that if you use these 3 in the way they're meant to be used, that your reading will become much more effective, it will become much more enjoyable, and you will learn a ton more stuff that will be available to you in the future as you continue to solve the problems this world needs you to solve. So until next time, Aaron Stewart from the Little Back Couch. Happy Labor Day. Do good and be wise.